possible connections to the Chinese military, particularly after allegations that NVIDIA aided DeepSeek in developing AI models latest by military application. Now, DeepSeek has gained attention for rolling out cost-effective AI models and is now expected to launch a new AI model V4 in the middle of February. And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Tech on NewsX World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs and trends from around the globe. The line between the real world and the virtual world is disappearing faster than ever. Today we discuss how AI, the metaverse and gaming are no longer just ideas, they're real forces shaping how we work, play and earn. From immersive digital workplaces driving global productivity to the rapid rise in Web3 and play-to-earn gaming, virtual worlds are creating new economies and new identities. But with this growth comes responsibility, concerns around data privacy, AI bias and fair access are growing louder. And as we look ahead to 2030 with hyper-real simulations and fully connected digital worlds, one question stands out. Are we truly ready to thrive in these virtual frontiers? To discuss all this and more, joining us now is Dr. Jane Thomason, a futurist, author and global thought leader in AI, Web3, gaming and digital transformation. She's a voice in blockchain and helps startups globally championing ethical innovation and a human-centered digital future. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Thomason. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get straight into this. As a futurist in AI and digital transformation, how do you envision the metaverse evolving with AI integration, and what trends like virtual economies and immersive workspaces could mean for global productivity in the coming years?
Look, thanks for the question. And I think it's absolutely timely to be having this conversation because increasingly, as people are using immersive spaces, and I'm not going to stick with the term metaverse because people get that confused with Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, and talk about immersive spaces and what's happening in immersive spaces. And we've learnt a lot from gaming because they were one of the first immersive spaces. But what we're seeing now is that in almost every industry, with digital twins, with planning, with remote workplaces where people are able to work all around the world, these immersive workspaces are going to get very much the norm rather than unusual. And with AI, what you've actually got is these AI agents, digital colleagues, agents that can help people design, plan, collaborate. They'll be able to, in digital economies, your metaverse AI agents will be trading tokens, creating jobs and skills, so people will be able to work globally without moving cities or countries, and they'll be able to collaborate globally. So the productivity boost comes from smarter coordination, less travel, and more effective use of these digital spaces that are already available to us.
Indeed, and Dr. Thomason, as a thought leader in gaming, India is experiencing one of the highest uptakes in Web3 gaming globally, with millions engaging in play-to-earn models and blockchain-integrated metaverses. How are these trends, powered by AI-driven avatars, transforming the industry, and what implications do they hold for the future of social interaction, entertainment, and economic opportunity?
Well, I think the big things for India is, first of all, mobile first, because most people, or many people, have got access to mobile technology, and a lot of these games are now able to be played on mobile technology quite cheaply. Now, the whole gaming aspect of it, the play-to-earn games, means that people can earn very small amounts of money from playing games. But in India, where there are a lot of people who are living still in poverty, then this makes a difference to them. But I think the big story for India, and this is where I would encourage anyone who's listening to think about it, is 3.2 billion people in the world play games, whether they're video games or whether they're serious games or whether it's gamification of industries. This is a massive and growing sector. And so I think for India, the opportunity of building that economy and building that sector and giving people the opportunity to learn the skills to be able to work in gaming is going to be a really important potential economic growth sector for India.
And in your view, as an author, what ethical trends should we watch for in the metaverse, so-called, such as data privacy in virtual realities or AI biases in immersive environments to ensure equitable access and prevent societal harms?
Look, this is a really important question. And so the answer is, we know that there are a whole slew of ethical questions, some of which we have only just started to unravel. And so, you talked about identity, you talk about privacy, you talk about children, how we protect children in the metaverse, you talk about bias, so we're not discriminating against certain groups. So there's a whole lot of things that we're going to need to figure out. There's for example, if you commit a crime in the metaverse, what happens? Are you going to be prosecuted in the same way as you'd be prosecuted in the real world? So the first thing is, we have many, many, many ethical issues. And the other thing is, in the metaverse, they're capturing more information about you than has ever been captured before, because they're capturing your psychological reactions, your physiological reactions, you're connected to IoTs and so forth. So there's a whole lot of issues around data. But one of the points that I would like to make, and I think is really important, is we're not going to solve that problem. We're not going to protect people through the traditional means of having committees, having policies, having structures and so forth. Because we're moving into a digital environment, the only way we're going to be able to govern it properly and protect people against ethical challenges is that it needs to be encoded in the platforms. And so what this is going to mean is an incredible amount of collaboration between government, between industry and the communities to make sure that built into these platforms are those kinds of safeguards that need to be there, and with the ethical considerations to protect people against bias and data misuse and so forth.
And looking to 2030, what bold trends do you predict at the intersection of AI, Web3 and gaming, such as hyper-realistic simulations or cross-platform in interoperability, and how can businesses and individuals adapt to thrive in these virtual frontiers?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to remember is that the generation coming forward have grown up with a screen in front of their face. So they're very comfortable in these immersive environments. So they'll be very comfortable working in them, getting skills in them, using them. They're very comfortable with digital assets. They're very comfortable with avatars. So we need to think about the world that they're going to be comfortable living in and where the opportunities are to earn income. And, you talk about AI and gaming. What we're seeing now is already games are being written by the players, particularly the Web3 games. So it's no longer the big companies who design a game and give it to you and you play it, but they've actually got cooperation and collaboration of people together with AI actually designing the future of games. And then with digital assets entering the gaming, it means that people can really transfer value from one game to another, in and out of games, back into the real world. So it's going to be a whole growth economy that everyone needs to take seriously.
And AI-generated content has already influenced elections. It's spread deepfake propaganda and manipulated public opinion in some circumstances, with regulation still lagging behind in innovation. In a world where AI can influence opinions, behaviour and how they vote, who decides what is ethical to tech companies, governments or the public?
That's a complicated question to answer, because let me say this. First of all, ethics is not consistent across cultures. So what might be ethical in a Western democracy might not be ethical in a communist country, for example. And so every country is going to have a different view about ethics. But at the same time, these platforms operate multi-jurisdictionally. So you're not going to be able to go, well, this is the rules in this country and I'm only going to stick to that, because people can go and operate on the platforms in other jurisdictions. So there's going to need to be some sort of cross-jurisdictional collaboration about some very, very basic requirements that get built into the platforms. That's the A. The B is you're always going to have bad actors, and you're always going to have people whose intent is to do harm or to cause trouble. And to some extent, I think that what we're going to start to see is a little bit like at the movies. You go to an R-rated movie or an M-rated movie or a G-rated movie, there's going to be some form of rating of the platforms around data security and ethics and all of these other issues. But the point that you make is absolutely correct. The technology is moving faster than the regulation, and it always does. And so moving forward, but in a digital way, and that's why I made the point, this has all got to be hard-coded in. It can't be we've written a policy and we've put it on a website. That won't work, because unless it's on the platform and it controls the way the platform is operating, it's not going to be effective. So we need a whole new form of governance for this future immersive AI-enabled Web3 world.
And finally, of course, from smartphones to AI assistants, every major tech shift has reshaped how humans think, work, and even form relationships in some circumstances. Do you think we're shaping technology, or is technology now shaping us going forward?
Well, we need to get back in front. So I think the answer is technology's taken away in front of us, and we need to have the kind of people who understand technology helping governments and people who are building these kinds of governance arrangements to understand what we need to control and how we need to protect people and how we need to make it better, and what are the kinds of platforms and opportunities that we want to put in front of people. So let's just say, health and education are perfect examples. We can really transform, particularly in emerging economies, how health and education are provided, because all you basically need is a mobile phone and then connection to one of these platforms, and you're going to really be able to bring people both health and education services, connection to the economy that they've never had before. So it's so powerful and it's so promising, but we can't do it with no controls or no safeguards. And I think that's where the conversation needs to be. And the safeguards need to be put in place by people who understand the technology, which is why the collaboration with the tech companies is absolutely essential.
Dr. Jane Thomason, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It was a pleasure to speak to you here on Trending Tech.
Thanks for having me.
With that's all we have time for. Do stay updated on NewsX World and Trending Tech for updates and innovations.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Kriti Mehta. We turn our focus today to a diplomatic gambit in the East. The first trip by a British Prime Minister to Beijing in 8 years. Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived in the Chinese capital seeking what he calls a more sophisticated and pragmatic relationship. But behind the handshakes at the Great Hall of the People lies a minefield of past sanctions, rising tariffs, and a massive trade gap. So what is the state of this high-stakes reset? Let's look at the numbers. Total bilateral trade between the UK and China has hit £103 billion in 2025. But the balance is strikingly lopsided. The UK exports roughly £30 billion to China, while importing over £72 billion. This is a £42 billion trade deficit. China is currently the UK's fourth largest trading partner, accounting for 5.5% of total British trade. And as the UK struggles with slow growth, Starmer has brought a delegation of 54 business leaders to ensure London isn't left in the cold. But to move forward, they must address the baggage of the past. The relationship crashed in 2021. The UK imposed sanctions on Chinese officials over allegations of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. Beijing reiterated and retaliated instantly. They blacklisted 9 UK citizens, including sitting members of parliament and peers. Names like Sir Ian Duncan Smith and Tom Tungendat were banned from Chinese soils. Their assets were frozen. British lawmakers and academics were targeted. Now, sources suggest a quid pro quo is on the table. China is considering lifting those sanctions on British MPs. In exchange, London recently gave the green light to China's controversial mega embassy near the Tower of London, a project previously blocked over security concerns. Then there's the battle over the road and the cloud. While the US and European Union have built a tariff wall against Chinese electric vehicles, with tariffs reaching as high as 100% in America, the UK has taken a different path. London has not yet imposed specific penalty tariffs on Chinese EVs. The result? Chinese car brands led by MG and BYD nearly doubled their UK market share in 2025, now accounting for almost 10% of all new car sales. But it isn't all smooth sailing. Under the UK National Security Act, London has clamped down on Chinese investment in critical sectors, from semiconductors to energy. Beijing has warned that targeting its security apparatus will trigger strong countermeasures. Beyond trade, we are seeing a surprising area of cooperation: law enforcement. The two nations are set to sign an agreement to disrupt the supply chains of human smugglers. Chinese factories are the primary source for the small boat engines used by gangs in the English Channel. This deal would see intelligence sharing to stop those engines from ever reaching the French coast. The UK is walking a tightrope. On one side, Washington, where President Donald Trump has imposed a 10% baseline tariff on all imports, including British goods. London is desperate to carve out an exemption. On the other side, Beijing, the only market big enough to offset a transatlantic trade war. So is this a new golden era? Hardly. China's team, Starmer's team, is calling it de-risking, not decoupling. They want Chinese investment in green gigafactories, but are banning Chinese tech from the 5G network. They want Chinese consumers for British services, but are condemning the crackdown in Hong Kong. As the Prime Minister concludes his talks today, the world is watching to see if pragmatism can survive geopolitics. In a turbulent 2026, the UK is betting that it can be the bridge between two colliding superpowers. But as history shows, bridges are often the first thing to collapse under pressure. Joining me now for this discussion is Dr. Asta Chadha, who is Associate Professor of International Relations at Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto. Dr. Chadha, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's then start with the first question. The UK government has recently approved China's massive new embassy at Royal Mint Court, just days before Starmer's arrival in Beijing. To what extent would you say that this approval serves as a diplomatic down payment to secure the lifting of sanctions on British MPs? And are there any real long-term security risks of allowing such a large-scale facility so close to the City of London's financial infrastructure?
Right. Well, thank you for having me here on your channel for the discussion. I mean, we need to remember that this facility at Royal Mint Court, the one that you're referring to as the new Chinese embassy area, this was bought by China back in 2018, and it had since then been under, severe scrutiny by the British, British organizations, British government, British intelligence, because of its proximity to Britain's financial center and also proximity to the other important key sectors. I'm hearing this proximity to the fiber optic cables that run throughout under the city, and then they do connect somehow to the intelligence agencies in London as well. So there were a lot of let's say aspects to this particular property. The second I think anxiety that the British had was with regard to the sheer size of this facility that has now been approved. It's 10 times larger than the earlier, embassy that China has had in London. So why does China need such a large embassy? Are they planning to increase the number of personnel? Is this going to be in any way used or in some way utilized as a dual-use space, wherein on one hand there is an increased surveillance on not just pro-democracy Hong Kongers who are currently in UK, or is it also intended to otherwise listen in on conversations that UK does not want China to listen in on? Now, all of these concerns seems to have been pushed to one side with the approval of this facility by the British Prime Minister, and the fact that he's trying to visit China, after allowing the construction of this facility, says clearly that definitely he's trying to prove to China that he's willing to overlook the past, past issues that UK might have had with regard to human rights, questions or abuses or any other issues that UK might have wanted to raise with China in the past. Now, with regard to your question as to whether this could in fact have a lot of impact on lifting of the Beijing sanctions on UK MPs, I mean, that remains to be seen. what we're hearing now is there is a possibility, but let's not forget there are other things in the run here. UK here is more dependent on China, definitely, when it comes to its own supply chains. UK wants to achieve this newfound, friendship with China that they're trying to secure, much like Canada, by the way. And given the fact that the US's partners are one by one lining up to warm up their relations with Beijing, shows to us that this is no longer just about lifting sanctions on certain members of parliament. This goes beyond. This is about catering to China in a way that China gets more access to their local markets. We do know that there is a huge amount of tariff, not just on US allies, but also on Beijing by United States. So this is one way that US allies and US rivals are trying to bridge that gap and bridge that relationship, trying to secure their own economic security in one way or another. And then thirdly, I must also mention that while China's facility had been, had not been allowed to be developed in London since 2018. Similarly, there was a ban, or there was some kind of a stay on even London's expansion plans or UK's expansion plans of its own embassy in Beijing. So the hope with Prime Minister Starmer's visit is that China would also likewise, reciprocate in the same way and allow UK to then start constructing or reconstructing or refurbishing its own embassy in Beijing just the way that they wanted to.
Right. Dr. Chadha, now, in fact, let's also talk about the fact that while the US has moved towards 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, the UK has largely held back and also allowed brands like BYD to gain significant market share. How do you see the UK's refusal to follow Washington's tariff wall? A break in Western trade unity, or is it a temporary economic necessity to meet Britain's own net zero targets?
I mean, it's a combination of both, right? I mean, UK had for a long time set this zero emissions vehicle mandates, which meant that most of their sales, I think up to 28% of their sales back in 2025 were aimed to be in electric vehicles. The question here is, can American and European car manufacturers actually cater to this demand or cater to these needs? And the answer was no. We knew that there was a restriction on the amount of Chinese investment into key sectors, into semiconductors, into batteries, all of which, by the way, UK in one way or another is dependent on China for. So despite placing those restrictions on China, if China happens to be the biggest supplier of electric vehicles, the biggest supplier of what UK wants its net zero emissions to be achieved by, then that leaves very little room for United Kingdom to to maneuver and try and find alternative partners. But you pointed out something very important, and here is where lies the risk. Even though UK might say that they're opening up their markets to achieve their targets, or they're opening up their markets to China only for specific issue-based productions or issue-based articles or objects, or let's say goods that they might need, this in fact, I would say, raises the dependence of United Kingdom on China even further. So what the main question that needs to be asked from Prime Minister Starmer here is that what is his policy in place if this dependence only worsens or increases on China? Does he have any policies in place to make sure or to cut down on that dependence in any way? And so far as we are reading into his policy, that seems far from what he's thinking about. There do not seem to be any such policies in place that would allow UK to effectively maybe de-risk and not decouple from China.
Right. Dr. Chandana, the current UK government is also describing its strategy as de-risking and not decoupling. Right? How can the UK realistically then de-risk its economy when it remains dependent on China for over 70% of the critical components for its green energy transition? And how likely is it for this pragmatism to turn the dependence that's seen during the previous golden era?
Right. I mean, see, this is not just UK. I think EU as a whole had earlier expressed very clearly that decoupling was no longer a feasible option. And I mean, in that they are they're pragmatically, they're correct. They are being more realistic in that sense, because given China's place or critical space in the supply chains, which could get globally disrupted. We saw how they got disrupted and how it raised anxiety worldwide when Trump tariffs were imposed. So this completely decoupling from China is not feasible for European partners in the short run anyway. I don't even think it's possible in the medium run. But what UK here is doing is, rather than trying to find alternative partners, it seems to be in some way in a bit to de-risk. What it's trying to do is making sure that at least through green investments, it allows China an access to its market. I mean, on the one hand, it could in fact allow UK to achieve its green targets. It might even allow UK in the medium term or in the short run to actually stabilize, the otherwise hit economy that it is facing. But there are a lot of risks here, and I'll try and point out some of those which you also mentioned earlier. I mean, this is obviously a response to the lack of trust or the lack of stability that UK is experiencing in its economy, and it was furthered by the Trump tariffs and the fear that how America would respond. So is UK doing something against it? Well, the UK's policy is then to in a way diversify its market. Unfortunately, with this visit, I mean, is this visit important by Prime Minister Starmer? It is important. I mean, China cannot be eliminated from UK's markets, but look at what all they are willing to give up, and I think that is where the key discussion lies. UK still wants and requires America's partnerships for its security needs. UK still needs America for its national security, or even regional security measures, or even Indo-Pacific policy. And UK remains a key partner. Specifically, let's say if we take the case of AUKUS, it was an alignment or sort of an alliance between Australia, US, and UK. And UK is a very important part of it. It's again a question mark. Where does UK stand on that? Would China not object? Would United States not object? Has Prime Minister Starmer actually figured out how to respond to United States if there were to be similar sanctions or similar opposition?
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump signals restraint on Iran, saying he hopefully won't need military actions and plans direct talks, while Pentagon officials affirm readiness. In Europe, the European Union brands Iran's Revolutionary Guards a terrorist group, sparking protests in Brussels and warnings from European Union leaders that the region can't afford another war. The US President has declared a national emergency and warned of tariffs on nations like Mexico that provide oil to Cuba, escalating trade tension. Thailand's reformist politician Nathan Phong emerges as frontrunner in polls ahead of the February vote, signaling potential shifts in the country's political landscape. After meeting with potential candidate Kevin Warsh, US President Trump confirmed he will reveal his pick for Fed chair tomorrow amid calls for rate cuts. Following US pressure, the ruling aims to shift control of the strategic waterway, marking a significant geopolitical development. China wants to take appropriate measures. US financial markets see extreme volatility as sharp swings in gold and silver and equities lead to $9 trillion movement in capitalization. Trump continues trade war with Canada with renewed threats of decertifying Canadian-made aircraft and charge a 50% tariff on those planes. Towns in Australia's southeast swelter in temperatures close to 50 degrees Celsius as wildfires reach through parts of rural Victoria. All right, our top focus continue to stay on Iran, viewers, where now tension between the US and Iran are escalating as Tehran threatens to strike US bases and aircraft carriers if military action is taken against them. Iranian military spokesman Brigadier General Mohammad Akramenia emphasized that numerous US military bases in the Gulf region are within range of their medium-range missiles. This warning comes after US President Donald Trump issued stark statements to Tehran saying that time is running out for a nuclear deal. This threat follows the movement of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier toward the region, further intensifying the military presence. All right, joining me now in this discussion is Matti Zweig, who's a geopolitical expert and joins us from Tel Aviv. Matti, thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, the US is clearly moving its arsenal towards Iran, whether it's aircraft or the naval fleet. But this is also happening at a time when Trump is saying he doesn't want to use military. Should Khamenei actually sit with him and talk?
Well, as usual, and also in international politics today, and especially since Trump took the administration, everything is a mix of sticks and carrots. He's all the time, and at the same time, sometimes in the same phrase, telling that he's going to attack a country, and he's telling that he's going to be close to some political deal. He has done this with tariffs, with Denmark, with Greenland, with Gaza, with everything, and also with Iran. He's doing exactly the same, but this time is different because the quantity of arsenal, as you say, and the quantity of important warships and the important readiness of all the dozens of bases in all the Middle East and around, it's such an amount of readiness that is really, I think, very close to some preemptive attack in some sensitive places that they are going to make the regime to agree to a big deal. And the big deal for Trump and for the world also is to make them make concessions about their ballistics intercontinental missiles program, and also about their nuclear program, and of course a way of making the world watch as there is a sole person that is really in charge of the world today in the way that Donald Trump talks, that is the US. So all the considerations together are making these threats. If these threats are going to be converted in some kind of a mini war or war is something that we have still to see. But in this case, with the regime in Iran, this brutal and oppressive regime that is killing people for thousands, I mean, you have to understand, if they don't care about killing people by thousands of their own people without any difference between a person that is opposing some economic deals or some things that is happening, a normal protester, and everyone is labeled as a terrorist and everyone is going to be killed. This is a regime that has no exit. They must completely change their way they are doing things and in 180 degrees. And this is something that is not happening now. And I think what is going to happen, it's many limited use of force by the US with some answer what they can do now in their fragile situation from the regime in Iran. And maybe they are going to start some movements that Trump wants to start as a regime change, which is local divisions. I mean, if the Baluchis or the Kurds are going to start taking the arms by themselves and trying to make separatist movements to not to be under this regime. So it's something that is going to start something, a movement that is not going to stop until it ends, as in Syria. And this is the hope, I think, for Trump, for not to put boots on the ground. That is something that clearly he doesn't want to do.
Do you foresee a regime change in Iran? Is that a possibility? Like how we saw in Venezuela?
Well, they have been there for 50 years almost. So I think in the past they couldn't do it. And we saw kind of protests, that they were economical protests or because of the rights of the women to spread their hair or things like this. This is something that it was limited and it was repressed, and the regime continued. In this moment, with such deep economical problems that they were caused by themselves first, because they have been years investing and spreading terror in other countries instead of investing all these billions and billions of dollars in their own country. And now they don't have enough water, they don't have enough electricity, they don't have enough means to produce food for everybody. So now we are not talking about only some middle-class protesters. We are talking about the spreading protest of everybody against a regime that has completely failed in every front. So I think it's going to be a regime change. The question is if it's going to be internal or external, or only Trump and the others are going to help this change, but some change is going to be, and very soon.
Meanwhile, we're also picking up reports of protesters also being, doctors being attacked for treating protesters there in Iran. How bad really is the situation on ground?
From what we know, and from also all kind of secret information that all the security organisms have in their hand, especially from the US, Israel, and other countries, everything that the regime has been saying, that about 6,500 has been killed, if they say this and they admit this, it's because the situation is over 20,000 dead. And they continue to do it. They have, the local policemen, they have received orders to just shoot on everybody. And this has never been in the history a solution for nothing except for more and more violence from now and the future and more dead. So they cannot continue in this way because they cannot stabilize the country. They cannot continue producing. They cannot continue to have a normal way of life as they understand that they must be their normal way of life as a oppressive regime of their own people. So things are going to change in a big way, I think, in the next 2 weeks.
All right, stay on with us, Matty. There are some more developments. Now, the US has expressed support for the European Union's decision also to designate Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. The US State Department stated that the IRGC serves as the Iranian government's primary tool for spreading terror both inside and outside Iran. The US had already classified the IRGC as a terrorist entity in 2019, citing its role in financing and promoting terrorism. This move by the European Union, according to the State Department, strengthens global efforts to hold Iran accountable for its destabilizing activities. Meanwhile, Citigroup has noted that US and Israeli actions against Iran are likely to remain limited as both nations avoid escalation while pressuring Tehran over its nuclear program. All right. Matty requested to join us back. Of course, Trump has voiced support to European Union over IRGC. In fact, first such instance in recent times when Trump, the US and European Union are on the same page, right? But talking specifically of Iran, what should happen to Iran? What will be left of Iran if US strikes? Should we see the country dwindling to chaos? Is there going to be Khamenei still in power, but moderate policies? Should we see a move to democracy? What are the possible scenarios?
Well, a move to democracy now, I don't think that is going to be very fast, even if there is a regime change, because the roots, the rotten roots of this regime are so deep that they have corrupted big parts of all the society. And this is also multiracial and multi-religious country that has been oppressed only by the Shiite clerics and their helpers. So this is going to be or a mighty change that is going to lead to a different government that also is going to explode in some moment, or directly to chaos, because a chaos in a Syria style. And I don't know if they are going to change everything in 12 days that they did in Syria. I don't think so. But it's going to start, as I said before, in regions like Balochistan, like Kurds, like, I don't know, Lors, Azeris, Afghans, I don't know. In a lot of places, there are so many oppressed people and minorities that this is going to start by regions and it's going to get to Iran. And in some way, they have to change completely their past because the world cannot go back to the situation before the protest started. We are not talking about some, you know, the world is very hypocritical. They look to the other side when you have a country like Afghanistan forbidden women to go to school, like they did formally now this week. I mean, they did it all the time, but now this week they say formally that they are not allowed to learn in the school. They look to the other side, don't do anything because there are not protests. So there is not another focus of tension and conflicts, and they don't have to invest money against this. But here, all is connected also with the economical development of Iran, with the help of Russia and his wars, to the help of oil to China, and also to the commitment of this regime to continue spreading terrorism in the world. And when I say terrorism, I'm not talking only anti-Israel or anti-US, but anti a lot of things. You see, you can also see what happened with Iranians going inside Venezuela and doing the mess they have been doing together with other superpowers. So it's in the interest of everybody that this regime will change soon. In which way it's going to change, we are going to see, I think, in the next 2 weeks, as I said before. And why do I say 2 weeks? Because even if they start tomorrow a war, nothing less than 2 weeks is going to change anything for the quantity and the size of the country and all the different interests they have. And also they have some protocols of continue fighting or throwing missiles, even if the central government is disconnected, is something that is in the modern wars. And they are going to implement it now with the new technologies. But anyway, I don't think they can continue in the way they are doing now. This time, I think the regime is not going to win, or not in the way they did it in the past.
But
anyway.
what happens if Iran decides to lay mines in the Gulf or retaliate to US attack, if that happens, and the regional powers as well?
They can retaliate, okay? And what happened now in Europe that they say IRGC are a terrorist group is not going to change a big time because they were, you know, in surveillance and they were looking at them and what they do, and they trying to kill opposition people in the US. On the Europe, they are going to continue doing that with this label of terrorism or not. But what is happening inside is what is really important. And if this is going to be an additional push of the US attacking sensitive military places all over Iran, this is going maybe to encourage a lot of people to take the weapons in their hands and to start trying to do a regime change.
Okay. All right, Matty, thank you very much for your comments and for joining us here at NewsX World. And we move ahead now, viewers. South Korea and Japan have agreed to upgrade their defense cooperation, which it reportedly includes working together on advancing artificial intelligence and unmanned weapon systems. The defense ministers of both countries have met in the Yokosuka city of Japan, and they have agreed to conduct joint naval search and rescue drills. This is a significant step as the two nations have recently strengthened political ties under Japan's new leadership. Experts say that the two countries, both of which are US allies, are looking to move past their historical tension. Traditionally, the defense ministers have discussed collaboration to ensure stability in the region while also maintaining strong defense ties with the United States. Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst from Kuala Lumpur, joins me in this discussion. Collins, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Should South Korea and Japan strengthening defense cooperation, and especially at a time when Japan has increased its defense spending, be a worry for China?
Definitely, we have seen how the different threat setting both share similar challenges and risks in the region. Of course, also from the same threat targets, from Beijing, from Pyongyang. This is an increased urgency for both powers in terms of synergizing the capacities for defense and security measures, and in terms of operational capacities, interoperability and capabilities by both sides. This is also in line with the push by the Trump administration, by Washington also, to make sure that both powers, both are allies, to strengthen their own bilateral security cooperation. This is certainly in line with that call, and since we have seen this momentum gaining steam since the Biden administration with Camp David back, and yet this is the strategic timeline for both to show this strong narrative and messaging to Beijing that despite overtures by South Korea and despite the moves by other powers to strengthen their own friend-sharing efforts, the resilience by both Seoul and Tokyo to showcase enough defense security capacities, and also being meant as a message also to Washington that both are now ready to elevate their own security cooperation. Of course, and this is a welcome move to encourage deeper security support from Washington, and both have been deeply aligned and integrated with the security umbrella of the US. And once systems are getting more capable and effective and efficient in terms of interoperability, this will spell greater positive deterrent efforts. Certainly a signal to Beijing, certainly also a signal to Pyongyang, despite concurrent parallel efforts to reset ties with both Beijing and Pyongyang. But this is a welcome move, and definitely will set a greater precedent and confidence building measure to the entire region. Kriti.
All right, Collins, thanks for your assessment. We're now going to move on, and I requested to stay on. Now, viewers, Thailand's Progressive People's Party leader Nathapong Rongyan continues to lead opinion polls, highlighting the stiff challenge facing Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul's bid to stay in power ahead of election on February 8. February's vote has settled into a three-way race between Anutin's conservative Bhumjai Thai Party, the former ruling Pheu Thai Party, and the Reformist People's Party. According to a poll published by Swan Dusut University, Nathapong is backed by a 35.1% of respondents, with Anutin coming in third with 16.1% behind Pheu Thai's candidate for Prime Minister Yoshanan Wongsawat at 21.5%. Anutin called a snap election on December 12 after less than 100 days as premier during a chaotic parliamentary session that could have led to a no confidence vote and the collapse of his fragile minority government. All right, request Collins to join us back in the discussion here. Collins, what can we expect in Thailand should Nathapong come to power?
Yes, we have seen how his popularity has surged, and this is also being seen as a signal, reflection of this deep fatigue among voters with this structural conventional status quo in terms of military bureaucratic governance. And we have seen how structural weaknesses in terms of economic stagnation, cost of living, risks, and this fatigue among voters, also the generation gap, and it's not a surprise to see his popularity now. And of course, we have seen how the surge of this demographic advantage also for him and his party. Young and urban voters they are no longer being confined to this conventional call for democracy and freedom, but also they are demanding at the same time the need for greater effective governance in terms of improving the cost of living, and of course also the economic dignity of the people in Thailand. So, and this must be in parallel. It cannot be at the expense of the other. So, what at the same time, the call for freedom and democracy and the respect for human rights have been paramount, but also at the same time the need for urgent reforms. And Natafong is seen as a reformist in this cycle, in this prospect. And of course, we have seen how this call by the new generations to have these tangible positive effects that can be felt on the ground, that can resonate with the people, especially the young people, in terms of cost of living, in terms of job opportunities and all that. So hence we have seen the rise of Natafong as opposed to the conventional old school approaches by Anutin. So and of course we might see some also attempts to reform the institutional frameworks in terms of the independence of the judiciary, in terms of tackling bureaucratic slowdown, and of course the influence of the military. And this will have an interesting couple of years ahead.
Now, Collins, this is also happening, the snap pose at a time when, of course, Thailand was in a conflict with Cambodia. Of course, that saw a resolution, but that is also a crucial concern in the country. Do you think Natafong is in a position to address that and the border issue, and what plan could he have to tackle that?
Well, we won't see any kind of dramatic shifts in that position. We have seen how Anutin has been riding high on the back of this improved support and sentiments of the people in Thailand, in terms of the nationalist sentiments and the need and the push for greater efforts to safeguard and maintain the territorial integrity and sovereignty and national interests of Thailand. And Anutin has been doing that for the past couple of months now to great effects, and he has now been riding high on the support from the people. But of course, Natafong also is being considered as a rookie in this framework, and but we should not dismiss the generational gap and demands, and that of course he has not been tried and tested in the avenue of managing conflicts, especially in defending the core interests and the security interests and the sovereignty of Thailand as a whole with regards to the conflict with Cambodia. But I don't foresee that is going to be the main deciding factor in this election, and we will see in the next couple of days whether Anutin can ride on this long-held sentiment against the backdrop of this dwindling economic positive effects, and also amidst all this multifactorial factor in terms of how Anutin will try to tackle these systemic challenges and to present himself as as a reformist, as compared to Natafong. So we'll see some bit of a tight race, but seeing how this has gone for now, and it remains to be seen whether Natafong can also ride on his new image and perception as a reformist, especially among the different demographic groups and the urban-rural divide also.
All right, Colin, stay on. Once again, now moving ahead, viewers, let's give you some more details that are coming up as far as DeepSeek and NVIDIA's partnership is concerned. Now, China has granted approval to DeepSeek, its top AI startup, to purchase NVIDIA's H200 artificial intelligence chips. Though the regulatory conditions are still being finalized. The approval extends to major Chinese tech giants ByteDance, Alibaba and Tencent, with a total of over 400,000 chips expected to be bought. However, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has yet to confirm these reports. While China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology and the National Development and Reform Commission have authorized the deal, they are still deciding the conditions for the purchase. The purchase of H200 chips, which are seen as critical for AI development, continues to be a flashpoint in the ongoing US-China tech rivalry. All right, Collins, thanks for joining me once again. Now, let's take our minds to the fact that US has allowed the H200 chips to China on the condition that it doesn't use it for military purposes. That, of course, is not yet clear as of now, but if H200 chips are used for DeepSeek, it might as well be used for military purposes against the US's condition.
Well, I do see that happening. We have seen how, definitely, the checks have been done, and the concerns have been also addressed. This is more about the, the reflection of the pressure that China is facing now in terms of the tech sanctions and restrictions. And of course, the DeepSeek and other Chinese tech firms are in dire need of the capacities and the different capabilities of the chips of NVIDIA especially. And this is all about, controlling domestic AI acceleration, and access to these chips are then, of course, allowed, but of course, it will be done under greater scrutiny and political supervision by Beijing. And of course, also we have seen how the concerns have been raised also as to the access and the possibilities of these chips being used against the interests of the US. But we have seen how the continuation of the tax sanctions in place, especially by the Trump administration, but there have been pockets of some leeways, some openings being given in terms of ensuring that China still retains some of the access to these chips to develop their own AI capacities. But of course, I don't see any spillover effects in terms of that being used to enhance the military capacities of China, and that in a way that will harm the long-term interests of the US. And if that is so, then this purchase will not materialize in the first place.
All right, Collins, thanks very much. We'd leave it at that. And we move on now, viewers. Melania Trump has premiered a new documentary that provides an exclusive look into her life as the wife of a president, making a political comeback. The premiere event took place at the newly renamed Trump Kennedy Center in Washington, where Melania, alongside her husband, US President Donald Trump, discussed the film's raw and emotional narrative. This is what Melania, the heroine of the documentary, commented. Listen in.
It's my life. So you will see everything, a lot of emotions, from celebration to sadness to celebration of course, inauguration, to humor and family. So I hope you enjoy it.
What message were you trying to send with that last scene? What did you
he was not involved. You will see he's in the film, but it's my life. So communication with us, and when we travel, when we spending time, or when I work, but it's more focused on my work than his.
The documentary, backed by a significant multi-million-dollar deal with Amazon, promises to offer viewers an emotional and personal perspective on the Trump family's journey back to power. Listen in to prominent political figures like the US House Speaker and the US Special Envoy to the Middle East at the premiere.
Well, historically it's been an important role. Melania, the First Lady, is a very intelligent person with a great life story, an inspiring life story. And she has a lot to share. She knows a lot about, for example, the threats of socialism and communism and things she's seen in her life and experienced. And I don't know how much of that will be reflected in the film, but she has a lot to say about a lot of things. I think the more she speaks, the better. I think she's a great model for young women, and she handles the criticism in stride, and that's a good example.
I think he relies on her opinions and her support. It's very valuable to him. And I think, look, I love to hear what she has to say. She's a very bright woman, and most importantly, she's a great human being. She cares about helping people.
And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. US financial markets see extreme volatility as sharp swings in gold and silver and equities lead to $9 trillion movement in capitalization. Trump continues trade war with Canada with renewed threats of decertifying Canadian-made aircraft and charge a 50% tariff on those planes. Towns in Australia's southeast swelter in temperatures close to 50 degrees Celsius as wildfires rage through parts of rural Victoria. US President Donald Trump signals restraint on Iran, saying he hopefully won't need military action and plans direct talks, while Pentagon officials affirm readiness. In Europe, the European Union brands Iran's Revolutionary Guards a terrorist group, sparking protests in Brussels and warning from European Union leaders that the region can't afford another war. Trump announces a brief ceasefire in Ukraine, claiming Russia has agreed to halt shooting, and Putin agreed to spare Kyiv during harsh winter cold. Ukrainian President Zelensky urges US support to stop Russian strikes on energy infrastructure as the European Union blacklists Russia over money laundering risks. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer praises a real progress from his China visit, focusing on trade and ties, but President Trump calls it very dangerous for Britain to engage with Beijing. Donald Trump teases a new Federal Reserve Chair announcement next week, with potential runners in the spotlight as he ramps up criticism of the central bank's policies. Trump credits Hamas for facilitating hostage returns and hints at the potential disarmament as bodies of Palestinians returned by Israel arrive at Gaza hospitals amid fragile peace talks. Alright viewers, then on to the top focus. In Brussels, dozens of protesters have gathered to urge the European Union foreign ministers to blacklist Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps following a deadly crackdown on mass protests. The European Union has also agreed to add the IRGC to its terrorist list, placing it alongside groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. This decision marks a shift in Europe's stance towards Iran, with European Union officials condemning the violence against protesters. Despite concerns over damaging ties with Iran, European Union officials stress that diplomatic channels will remain open. Additionally, the European Union imposed sanctions on 15 individuals and 6 entities linked to human rights violations, including those involved in Iran's missile and drone programs. Let's listen to what the protesters had to say.
IRGC is working as the main arms of the Iranian regime for repression and for suppressing the protests inside the country. IRGC is responsible for the external war and terrorism in the region, and also for terrorist attacks on Europe. So it is really a strong signal from Europe to the Iranian people that we stand by you against your suppressors.
All right, now joining in this discussion is retired Major General A.K. Sewaj, who is a geostrategic expert from New Delhi. General Sewaj, thanks very much for joining us. Firstly, what's your assessment of the fact that European Union has now gone on to designate IRGC as a terrorist organization? This, in fact, is after many such instances, is one where European Union and the US seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, Kirti, no doubt about it. European Union now declaring IRGC as a terrorist organization, and basically they are now in line with what the US had done it, and this is after what Al-Qaeda and ISIS have been also earlier declared as a terrorist organization. Now, as far as European is concerned, what does it mean? It means that certain individual and entities of IRGC, their bank accounts will be also frozen, and they will not be allowed to move out of Iran. Their travel ban will be there. Now, the situation is very fluid in Iran. No doubt about it. There are, protesters which are still on the road. But since the internet blackout is there, one does not know. And the issue today is coming. The US is preparing for the assault. It has already moved Ibrahim Lincoln from Indo-Pacific. It has come now very close to Persian Gulf. It has moved about 50,000 personnel in different bases in Middle East, which are like Saudi, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Jordan, and they have also moved their submarines, and they are equipped with Tomahawk missile. They also moved air defense system, that is Patriot missile system, and third this is terminally high altitude area defense system. So overall, US is very well prepared to strike. Whether it will strike or not, time will only tell.
All right. Now, Iran's response is also very sharp, General Siraj. Last year, of course, there was that 14-day war. What can we expect now if this strike does happen?
You know, one thing is very clear. Iran is better prepared this time. Iran has an arsenal of about 3,000 to 4,000 ballistic missiles. Though they do not very strong in the air defense and the air power, but where they are strong is that they have a missile which can strike all parts of Middle East as well as Israel. And they know it that all these countries, Bahrain, Oman, Jordan, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they will be hit badly in the crossfire. And so will be the Israel, because Israel Iron Dome system was also found wanting last time. Now, another very important thing is Iran is very well prepared. Iran is not Venezuela, which USA is trying to do.
Yeah.
They will strike back, and they strike back with a might. There's no surprise angle now. Iran is knowing it, they can be attacked anytime, so they are prepared. Second thing is what Donald Trump is thinking, they can be a regime change. There can't be a regime change unless there are boots on ground. And US is not ready to put boots on ground. The another two issues which stand very, very important is, the CIA and Mossad agents have infiltrated in Iran almost about 3 to 4 months. But they have not able to divide or create a division in IRGC. Remember, the IRGC is the backbone of Iran. And IRGC is still very loyal to Ayatollah Al-Khamenei. Until unless there is a division in IRGC which also controls their economic, work, there can't be a regime change. Second thing is there can be a regime collapse, because in case America hits their nuclear installation, command and control system, logistics supply, there may be a collapse of regime, but there won't be a regime change. Who will be thereafter?
Yeah.
Until unless the US do not have boots on ground, it will not happen. And US is not very keen to have boots on ground. So situation is very, very fluid, and Iran is very well prepared to strike back. And you will find it in case this war take place. As you were mentioning, 14 days war which took place earlier. This time the impact of the Iran hitting the Middle East basis will be far greater than what was last time, and you will find the energy sector, because almost 70% of oil is coming from Middle East. You find that it will be badly hit, and the energy prices will go, and the regional instability will increase. I suppose Donald Trump is thinking that, and to me it looks like that it is more of a pressure tactic. Donald Trump will not make this mistake to attack directly on Iran. If it will do it, you will find it Iran will respond with its all might, which is almost about 3 to 4,000 ballistic missiles.
In fact, General Siraj, Iran has also now added 1,000 new drones to its arsenal. That clearly is signaling it's ramping up its military, preparing for an imminent attack or strike. But what do we know about its nuclear position as of now? Because that is Trump's primary concern. It does not want Iran to build nuclear weapons.
As far as the nuclear weapon is concerned, Kriti, it is mysterious situation. Last time when the US has attacked on Iran and saying that it has attacked the three bases of Iran nuclear sites, but the Iran was successful in moving out 60 ton of uranium, which was enriched almost about 60%, and they have moved to a safe place. No one knows whether they have already made a nuclear weapon or they are on the threshold of making nuclear weapon. So it is not very easy. Like what we are also contemplating, that there may be a limited strike, that the US may only strike on the nuclear installation command control system, wherein the protesters feel elated that yes, the America is coming for help. But it's a double-edged weapon. Why it is double-edged weapon? It may unite Iran to fight against US. That can also happen. And second thing is, does US has got a complete knowledge where are the nuclear weapons, if they have made it, or where they are likely to make nuclear weapons? It is not known. And again, in last time when the US strike, it was about 80 to 90 meter deep inside, where they have used GBU 57 bomb, dropped by the B-2 bomber. This time they are far more deep inside. So it is very difficult. I don't think US will succeed in destroying the nuclear weapons of, in case if it is there, or they are on the verge of making, because anything above 60% uranium, it takes only 2 weeks to make it. In a weapon grade, more than 90%. So therefore, it is not going to be easy for US, and the situation will deteriorate, and Iran will strike back, and strike back hard on all the Middle East countries which are now supporting Israel and US. So there is a very big problem. Another thing which is coming, Kriti, is that majority of these Middle East countries like Saudi, UAE, they have said they will not let US to use their airspace. So that point is there. If by chance US can't use their airspace, then it is only limited to only sea, like Abraham Lincoln destroyers and all, they are firing, or from submarine, they are firing from submarine Tomahawk missile, or the Israel firing from Israel. So therefore that will be also limited. So I feel it is going to be no one knows what will be the outcome, and no one knows what is going to happen, because Donald Trump is most unpredictable. But I certainly feel that whatever Donald Trump is doing, it is doing a pressure tactics so that the Iran agree for a nuclear deal.
Yeah.
That Iran agrees to sign a nuclear deal on the terms which are by and large given by US. I think that is the aim. US will not make a mistake of directly attacking Iran, because Iran is not Venezuela.
Right.
When Iran will strike back, and strike back with its all force.
General Siwach, of course, subject for a longer discussion, but we'd leave it at that for now. But I requested to stay on with me as we proceed now to cover news on Cuba as well. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has condemned US President Donald Trump's executive order imposing tariffs on countries that sell oil to Cuba, calling it a brutal attack of aggression. Rodriguez criticized the US for intensifying the 65-year-old economic blockade against Cuba, which he says has led to extreme living conditions for the Cuban people. The executive order stipulates that additional tariffs may be imposed on goods from any country providing oil to Cuba, including crude oil and petroleum products. The order, effective January 30, gives the US Secretary of Commerce authority to determine which countries are involved in these transactions and to enforce the new regulations. I request General Siwach to join me back in the discussion with his first comments.
You know, one thing is very clear, that Donald Trump always wants a regime change in Cuba. Cuba is a communist country.
Yeah.
Remember, no one can forget what happened in 1962, when it is considered on the edge of a nuclear war, where the missiles were put by the Russia, that time Soviet Union, in Cuba. So the point is that even in Trump 1.0, Donald Trump wanted to change a regime in Cuba, but he could not succeed. And then Obama changed the completely. He wanted to have more relation with Cuba. So as on today, Donald Trump wants to go all out to change regime in Cuba. So what it wants to do is that it wants to now throttle Cuba. It wants to economically let Cuba collapse. And how does he do it? You know, earlier there was a oil which was coming from Venezuela, and
Yeah.
this was a discounted. That is no more coming once Venezuela is now by and large under the control of US. Where the oil is coming, it is basically coming from Mexico. That also now this executive order is passed. Emergency has declared that from 30th January that any country which is supplying oil directly or indirectly will be action will be taken against that. So therefore the aim is to put tremendous pressure on Cuba, and as the situation is today prevailing in Cuba, the economic condition is gone from bad to worse. There is hardly oil left more than about 5-6 days. There is no power. There is a power cut of almost 20 to 22 hours in a day, and people are in a very bad state. So the aim of Donald Trump is to make sure that the economically Cuba is crippled, and anyone which is supplying oil will be now given a lot of pressure. So now what will happen? Now as far as the Cuba is concerned, they have been also told that either you negotiate. What are the terms of condition of negotiation? No one knows about it. But Donald Trump wants to negotiate on his terms. Whether the Cuban government agrees or not, time will tell. What the US is saying, the Cuban government is involved in anti-American activities. They are involved in necro-terrorism, and they are also involved in illegal migration.
Yeah.
And they are doing certain activities which are against the interest of US. So they, as far as US is concerned, is making its case as to what they are doing, why they are doing.
Yeah.
But now the situation is fluid, and let's see how things unfold.
Now, General, the fact that Trump is going on with his tariff threats, you know, he's now threatening any country that supplies oil, gas to Cuba also with tariffs. How do you think this is going to affect American economy, and especially Trump's standing just when he's about to face the midterms?
You know, everything will depend upon what will be the outcome in the midterm election. And one does not know as to how the situation will prevail. You know, there are conflicting, you can see signatures which are coming from US. Certain people are saying that the white people are happy what Donald Trump is doing, he is doing for his own country. But there are certain section of people saying that he has basically ruined the economy of US. Because once you increase the tariff, who has to pay? It is the consumers, and the consumers are the Americans. So there is an inflation, there is unemployment which is on the increase. So there are problems in US as to how this result of midterm election will dictate what will be the course of action Trump follow thereafter. But as on today, Trump is very clear that he is not going to negotiate. He is going to put tremendous pressure on Cuba. He is going to cauldron it from outside. Anyone supplying oil to it will be also, there will be sanction against that. So therefore, there is a problem as far as the Cuba is concerned. Mexico can't supply, Venezuela can't supply, so it's a big issue. Now, does this putting of tariff? Yes, it affects the consumers in US. They have to pay, but overall, what has he done? Which are the positive things which they done? You know, as far as US economy is concerned, it is of $31 trillion, whereas the debt is about $37 trillion. So there is a huge debt of $6 trillion more than its own economy. So possibly by raising this tariff, he is trying to reduce this debt. There is no denying that fact. Though the pressure is on the public of US, because after all this tariff has to be paid by them. So this is what he is trying to do it. Second thing is what he is doing it by putting tariff and all. It is dictating terms with the world over. As on today, it has been successful. Countries like India, which are not at all bowing down, though we have a 50% tariff, but India does not want to sign any trade agreement on the terms which are dictated by Donald Trump. We say it can be only signed once it is mutual beneficial. But other countries, whether it is European Union or you see UK, Australia, Japan, South Korea, They have signed free trade agreement on the terms and conditions of US. US is now trying to boss around and it is dictating.
Construction projects this year, including industrial factories in 20 regions. The country is preparing for a major party political gathering. The 9th Party Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea is coming soon, where Kim is expected to set important policy goals. At the event, Kim will discuss construction plans, which is due to include public health facilities, leisure complexes, and industrial factories in 20 regions. This is reported to impact nearly 1/3 of the country's cities and counties. Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea has elected delegates to be sent to the upcoming party congress. But the date for the high-level meeting has not yet been announced. And now moving ahead, the Panama Supreme Court has annulled crucial port contracts held by Panama Ports Company, a subsidiary of Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison. These contracts have been in place since the 1990s and involve the operation of container terminals at both entrances to the Panama Canal, the Pacific and Atlantic sides, separate from the canal's primary waterway operations. The court's ruling, which found the contracts to be unconstitutional, comes as a significant blow to CK Hutchison, particularly as it looks to complete a $23 billion sale of its port operations worldwide, including the Panamanian terminals. The decision is seen as a win for Washington, where the US has long sought to curb Chinese influence over the canal, a key global shipping route. The sale of the ports to a consortium led by BlackRock and Mediterranean Shipping Company, who were expected to purchase these terminals, could be at risk, with the future ownership of these strategic ports now in question. In response, Panama Ports Company, which has operated the terminals for decades, said the ruling lacks a legal basis and has vowed to challenge it. PPC has stated that it plans to pursue arbitration over the court's decision. The ruling also comes at a time of increasing US-China rivalry over global trade routes, with China threatening to block the deal if it undermines its national interests. President Jose Raul Mulino of Panama has indicated that if the court's ruling stands, private-public partnerships could be explored to take over the operations of the two ports. The decision could force Panama to restructure its legal framework for handling port contracts and may require new tenders to operate the terminals. The impact on shipping lines and the global supply chain remains to be seen, but analysts warn that this could significantly disrupt operations at a critical transit hub in global maritime trade. All right, Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute of Tokyo, joins me now from Tokyo in this discussion. Dr. Nagao, firstly, how do you view the developments and how really is China prepared to tackle?
Of course, for China, this is a very important contract, and one of the good examples, US-China competition affects economic contract, business contract between China and other countries. But in this case, anyway, because security is a background issue, there is no choice for Panama to end the contract with China. So now Panama got legitimacy to end the contract with China. So that's why for Panama it is the best situation, but for China this is a nightmare situation. View from this, what China will do as a retaliation is, of course, China is second largest partner for Panama to using the Panama Canal. So that's why one of the things China can do is, for example, China will not use the Panama Canal. In this case, Panama government will lose income from China. And at the same time, because of the contract is illegal, the court said, but China will not accept it. This is a political verdict, China believes. So that's why China will ask the international court to to change the situation. That is also the mother China can do. But at the same time, view from the Canada, this is a security issue. Security issue is survival or not is matter. So in this case, for Panama, decision is made. This is legal. This is bad contract the Panama suffered. So that's why the Panama will say this is right way. And Panama cannot back down in this case toward China.
Right, Dr. Nagar, in fact, stay on. There's some breaking news. China has reacted. Let's give that news to our viewers. Now, Beijing has reacted strongly to Panama Supreme Court after it annulled the key concession allowing Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison to operate ports at the Panama Canal. The Chinese government has vowed to take necessary measures to protect the interests of the Chinese companies after the court ruling. China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Hiakun expressed their solidarity with CK Hutchison, saying that China would resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies in the wake of the decision. All right, Dr. Nagao requested to join me back. China, of course, has reacted, but what are the measures now that it could plan to take? You were talking about the international court, but what are the immediate steps that it can take?
Anyway, China's way of thinking is something suffer China faced. In this case, China tried to retaliate to deter the similar move in other places. But at the same time, view from what really happened this way is not effective because currently the situation is related to the security. Security means that most of the country cannot resist it. So that's why this is not purely the business issue. So that's why just retaliation is not effective enough for the other country to cut the relation with China. So that's why in this case, the company of the CK Hudson Holdings was planning to sell all of the port to the other rich investor of Europe. And so just to get income and not touch with many port projects. Indeed, view from the business, this is the most effective way, just to sell and not involve the politics. But the Chinese government involved this contract and instead of the company, so making a pressure to the company not to do that. And instead of this, to ask the court and retaliate against Panama, something like that. This is quite Chinese government way of thinking, and this is not effective. Anyway, China's government will lose, and the company need to follow the Chinese government, and but nothing they will get. Instead of this, they just lose right to control the Panama Canal, but that will happen. So that's why China's government way is something like that, but this is not effective in the long run anyway.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thanks very much for joining me and giving your opinion. And now moving ahead, viewers.
Hello and welcome. I am Ellie Richardson and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Trump signals restraint on Iran, saying he hopefully won't need military action and plans direct talks, while Pentagon officials affirm readiness. In Europe, the EU brands Iran's Revolutionary Guards a terrorist group, sparking protests in Brussels and warnings from EU leaders that the region can't afford another war. The US president has declared a national emergency and warned of tariffs on nations like Mexico that provide oil to Cuba, escalating trade tensions. Thailand's reformist politician Nathar Phayong emerges as front-runner in polls ahead of the February vote, signalling potential shifts in the country's political landscape. After meeting with potential candidate Kevin Warsh, US President Trump confirmed he will reveal his pick for Fed chair tomorrow amid calls for a rate cut. Following US pressure, the ruling aims to shift control over the strategic waterway, marking a significant geopolitical development. China wants to take appropriate measures. US financial markets see extreme volatility as sharp swings in gold and silver and equities lead to $9 trillion movement in capitalization. Trump continues trade war with Canada with renewed threats of discrediting Canadian-made aircraft and charge a 50% tariff on those planes. Towns in Australia's southeast swelter in temperatures close to 50 degrees Celsius as wildfires rage through parts of rural Victoria. And for your top story this hour, a US missile destroyer docked at Israel's southern Red Sea port city of Eilat. Israel's military say the arrival was pre-planned and part of ongoing cooperation between the Israeli and US armed forces. The docking comes as Washington moves more military assets into the Middle East, boosting both firepower and defensive capabilities. US officials say the build-up gives President Donald Trump added military options, including potential action against Iran, amid growing regional tensions. While American warships frequently operated in the Red Sea, their arrival at Israel's Eilat port is considered rare. We are now being joined by Nilüfer Ara, who is an Iranian woman and human rights activist in Turkey. Thank you so much for joining us here on NewsX World today. What message does the arrival of the US warship send about American support for Israel and the deterrence against Iran, and how might Tehran interpret it?
First of all, hi. Second of all, the message is that US is gonna stay with Israel. The first and the last message is this to Iran and to Tehran. And this is just a strategic point of view of mine, but this was pre-planned and they were going to do this, and they already said it that we are going to do this. So this is not a threat or something else like that. But Iran or Tehran or the politicians of Iran, they might take this as a threat because they had already threatened the United States of America and Israel and some other countries that they are ready to throw at least 1,000 drones, and they have bragged about their military capabilities. I think this is an answer to them, and this says that the U.S. is going to always stay with Israel and the people of geographic is like important geographic points of the Middle East. So they sent their military over there to protect everyone, and that's it.
Do you think an increased US naval presence in the Red Sea will it help prevent escalation, or do you think it risks provoking military response from Iran?
I think it will help them not attack. Honestly, because my father is from IRIB and they are connected with IRGC, I know these guys, I know their mentality, I know their point of views. So they needed to be threatened. This is their only way, and Trump has the right to do this, actually.
And how should regional players and global powers balance military readiness with diplomatic efforts to avoid a wider conflict in the Middle East?
I mean, this was just a revolution, and then it was like headed to a war, like an inside war in the country, in our country. And then when the people of Iran asked Trump or asked Netanyahu to attack them, all of a sudden it turned to a global issue. So for right now, for this kind of crisis, I really don't know who should like interfere or anything like this. But like I just know one thing, that President Trump or like Mr. Netanyahu is gonna do something and it's gonna benefit everyone.
And do you think should Israel balance regular joint operations with the US against the need to provoke neighbouring countries?
I feel like sometimes yes, especially for Iran, because they keep threatening that they have nuclear weapons. And this is not just a threat to USA or Israel. This is a threat to all of us, to all of the humanity. Because as far as I know, the people in IRGC, if they get angry over something little, they might throw these nuclear bombs around the world, and they might like attack humanity. So these kind of things are needed to be done in order of the safety of the people of the world, not only the Israel people or like the United States people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you, Niloufer. Don't go too far, as we will come back to you in just a moment. The Syrian government and the Kurdish-led group, the Syrian Democratic Forces, have said that they have agreed to a comprehensive ceasefire and have phased integration of military and administrative bodies into the Syrian state under a broad deal. Under the agreement, forces that have amassed on front lines in the country's north would pull back, and Interior Ministry security forces will deploy to the centres of the cities of Hasaka and Kamashli in the northeast. Both are currently held by the SDF, and the local security forces will be merged. This comes after the Syrian government forces under President Ahmad al-Shara captured swaths of northern and eastern Syria from the SDF and forcing the Kurdish forces to retreat into a shrinking enclave. We are now being joined again by Niloufer. Thank you so much for joining back with us. What does the possible change in date or location of the next US mediated talks say about the state? What does this ceasefire of the SDF integration mean for Syria's future and unity?
Okay, first of all, let's see something here. The Kurdish people near the Syria and Turkey were always trying to have their own land and own country, right? Especially one of the terrorist parts named PKK. They were all against Turkey, and they were all against Iraq or like against Syria all the time. And they were like saying that we want our own land, which I think they are wrong. This is their land. They are part of Turkey or part of anywhere that they are from. But at this point, this is just a waste dream, because this is not going to happen anymore. And this will benefit everyone because they need to be controlled by some people. And this is a better way for the United States to control them from attacking anyone else or from attacking any country or anyone else.
And can bringing the Kurdish-led forces into the government really end years of fighting, or could tensions continue?
I mean, like this kind of fightings, I think it will continue for years, because they're not going to stop for what they think, because they think that they owe a land, which this is like, I mean, if I want to say really the truth, we have a lot of regimes, we have a lot of people. For example, I am Fars. In Iran, we have different people like Fars, Turk, Baluch, Lor. They don't come and say, we want our own land, because Iran is their land. Iran is my land. And it doesn't matter that where are we from? We are all Iranians. but they don't think like that. They don't think that, okay, they are Turkish too. The first thing that it comes to their mind is that no, we are Kurdish, we want our own land. So I think these fights will keep continued.
And what challenges remain in ensuring the ceasefire holds and that Kurdish civil and educational rights are protected as part of this deal?
Actually, I don't know about this, so I'm not going to have any comments upon this. Because if I give you anything further, it will be a wrong information or a wrong opinion.
Okay, no worries. And do you think long term that this is something that will benefit everyone? Do you think it is going to be a long-term solution, or do you think this is a short-term situation?
This is a short-term situation. The long-term is that, I mean, like, maybe they should start to negotiate with them again and try to make them understand some humanity things. But if they don't understand, then they should do something else.
Thank you so much for joining us here on NewsX World today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the next round of US-mediated peace talks with Russia may be delayed or moved. The meeting had been planned for 1st of February in Abu Dhabi, but Zelensky says the timing is now uncertain. Meanwhile, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says Washington's top envoys will not attend the next round. Zelensky also said that negotiators have failed to reach a compromise on control of Ukraine's Donetsk region. He adds Ukraine will stop striking Russian energy targets if Moscow does the same. And Zelensky added Russia has halted prisoner of war exchanges with no swaps since October. We are now being joined by Glenn Grant, who is an ex-advisor to Defence Minister of Ukraine and geopolitical commentator. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World.
Thank you.
What does the possible change of date and location of the next US-mediated talks say about the state of the Ukraine and Russia diplomacy?
Well, basically, it says that nothing is happening, but we knew this. The pressure for compromise for Ukraine is all coming from US because Donald Trump, obviously, he wants a distraction from Epstein, and he wants a victory to say he's solved another war. But he's not putting any pressure on Russia at all. And Ukraine is willing to compromise a long way, but it's not willing to give up land. And so with both sides, with Russia demanding that land and Ukraine not willing to give it up, there's absolutely no chance of any progress forward but just fighting to win the war on one side.
And how important is the US mediation in keeping the Ukraine-Russia talks alive, and can it succeed if either side is unwilling to compromise?
Well, the answer to that is they're not keeping it alive. They're keeping it alive for America. They're keeping it alive for Donald Trump. And they're trying hard to persuade Ukraine to compromise. But then the US is not doing anything because, they're saying, unless you compromise, we won't give you security. Well, no leader in the world is going to accept that, especially from someone like Donald Trump, who's actually shown himself to be untrustworthy in his support of Ukraine. So we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to go anywhere fast, I think, is the answer to that. But America, I suspect, under Rubio, will keep trying, and they'll keep trying and keep putting things into the air that kites that will not fly, I think, is the best description. Unless America gives substantial guarantees of support, i.e. joining NATO, don't expect much to happen in the near future.
How are disagreements over territory stopping progress in the peace talks?
Well, I mean, they are the complete block on progress. I mean, Zelensky cannot give up the land. It's quite clear that if he does that, there will be another Maidan, another upsurge of national unrest, and he will be removed and someone else will be put in. And he can't afford that because he'll end up in prison, and he knows that. So he's got to stay stubborn and just say, we're not going to give up anything. The country doesn't want to give up anything. On the other side, Putin has staked his claim for this. And if he suddenly compromises and he can't find a way to compromise, then he's going to be seen as being weak. But let's be clear about it. Putin does not want to compromise. You can see he has some feelings of justification. I mean, he's got Donald Trump in his pocket. He's got the Hungarian boss in his pocket, and quite a lot of other politicians, and a lot of weak European politicians as well.
Could stalled prisoner exchanges and lack of trust on humanitarian issues reflect deeper challenges that go beyond battlefield negotiations and complicate any peace deal?
I don't think that the prisoner exchanges are even part of the peace deal. I mean, they're a sideshow, and they're a sideshow because they're useful for both sides. Russia needs all the skilled people that it can get, and anybody who's been on the Ukraine side or has fought first is going to be useful, because the turnover of Russian soldiers is so high that any soldier coming back who's got a modicum of skill is likely to be, promoted fairly quickly and put back into the line. For Ukrainians, it's a human rights matter. The Ukrainians want their people back. They want their bodies back, and they're going to keep pushing to try and get Russia to release them. And Russia doesn't want to keep them because it costs them money and energy and time to keep prisoners. So it's far easier to get rid of them. But I don't see that these things are going to affect the peace deal at all. And you mentioned trust. There is no trust. Let's be quite clear. The Ukrainians cannot trust Russians who are both torturing, even castrating prisoners before they send them back. And if you're torturing and starving prisoners, then you can't trust a country like that in any way, shape or form.
What signals does the timing of these renewed attacks on Ukraine, on trains and on energy power grids, what message does that send to the international mediators and potential supporters of this peace deal about the next round of discussions?
I don't think there's any thought in the Russian minds about negotiations and peace deals and anything else at all when they're doing this, because Russia doesn't care. You have to understand, Russia has no desire to care about what anybody else is doing, except they want it to stop. That's all. They want support to stop. So what they're doing is focused completely and utterly on Ukraine. It's showing Ukraine that they are vulnerable. It's showing Ukrainians that Russia is going to win. It's showing Ukrainians that Russia has got better technology. And the better technology is the main thing. They are identifying different and better ways of attacking Ukraine in depth, of attacking civilians, and they're doing so. So that's the main focus for the Russians, is killing Ukrainians, as many as possible, as quickly as possible, to force them to surrender. That's not a timing thing per se. It's about when new technology becomes available to them, they use it as quickly as possible to put the pressure on Ukraine.
And how far away do you think we are from any start to a peace deal?
Oh, we're not. There's not going to be a peace deal. You have to understand this. This is an existential war, and therefore a national war. It's a fight to the death. There's no peace deal coming. It's not going to happen. Ukraine is going to keep fighting. Russia is going to keep fighting until one side collapses. Russia economically, possibly. Ukraine, possibly just running out of manpower. But I don't think either side, it's going to happen for a long time yet. So I think we may be 2, 3, even 4 years away still from a collapse on one side. Having said that, Russia could collapse tomorrow because that's the way Russia is.
Thank you so much, Glenn Grant, for joining us here on NewsX World. Taiwan has completed the first underwater sea trial of its first domestically built submarine. The vessel, named Narwhal, carried out a shallow water submerged test off the southern port of Kushan. The trial marks a major step in Taiwan's push to strengthen deterrence against China's navy and protect key sea lanes in any conflict. The submarine is part of an indigenous program aimed at building up to 8 vessels, despite delays and political pressure from Beijing. The project has drawn on technology and expertise from the United States and Britain. The submarine will use a US-made combat system and carry Mark 48 heavyweight torpedoes. Taiwan says it hopes to deploy at least 2 of the new submarines by 2027 as it modernizes its forces for asymmetric warfare against a far larger Chinese military. The Pentagon is at odds with artificial intelligence developer Anthropic over safeguards that would prevent the government from deploying its technology to target weapons autonomously and conduct US domestic surveillance. Anthropic has stated that its AI is extensively used for the national security missions by the US government and that they are in productive discussions with the Department of War about ways to continue that work. The San Francisco-based startup is preparing for an eventful public offering as it also has spent significant resources courting US national security businesses and sought an active role in shaping government AI policy. However, Anthropic is one of the few major AI developers that were awarded contracts by the Pentagon last year. Others were Alphabet's Google, Elon Musk's xAI, and OpenAI. That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with U.S. a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Trump escalates trade war with Canada. Aircraft tariffs could disrupt US aviation. Canada-China ties worsen US-Canada tensions. Trump threatens 50% tariff over jets. Political tensions intensify US-Canada trade clash.
Hello, I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching another episode of Explained with me. The trade war between the US and Canada is heating up once again, with US President Donald Trump threatening a 50% tariff on Canada. What does this mean? Why is Trump doing this? And what's at stake for both countries? Let's break it down. This threat from the US is part of a broader set of actions aimed at leveraging trade disputes to gain political and economic concessions from Canada. To understand the context, let's first rewind back to 2018, when Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. While Canada was America's top supplier of these metals, the US administration argued that the high volume of imports posed a risk to domestic production. In retaliation, Canada imposed its own tariffs on US goods worth $12.6 billion. These tensions were eventually resolved through the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA, which then became the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, now called USMCA, in 2019. However, the trade rift was reignited in 2025, when Trump threatened new tariffs on Canadian goods, particularly targeting aircrafts. The current dispute centers around Canada's refusal to certify Gulfstream Aerospace's jets manufactured in Savannah, Georgia. In response, Trump has threatened to decertify all Canadian-made planes, including the renowned Bombardier jets, and impose a 50% tariff on any aircraft sold into the United States. This move specifically targets Bombardier, one of Canada's largest aircraft manufacturers, and threatens to ground thousands of Canadian-built regional jets used by major US airlines such as Delta and United. If Trump follows through with his threat, the impact on the US aviation sector would be significant. Bombardier's regional jets, such as the CRJ series, are essential for U.S. airlines, helping to connect smaller cities to larger hubs. There are over 600 Canadian-built CRJ jets in service across the U.S., making over 2,600 flights daily and providing 175,000 passenger seats. Grounding these planes would cause massive disruptions, particularly for regional airlines that serve smaller airports, many of which rely on Bombardier jets. This will be a big hit on current administration as they are freshly out of recent flight disruptions, which was also caused by the Trump administration. The consequences would be far-reaching, affecting not only airlines but also passengers, airport operations, and even employment in the aviation sector. The motivations behind Trump's threats seem to stem from a mixture of political and economic objectives. For one, Trump has always used tariffs as a strategic tool to pressure other countries into making concessions. His approach to trade policy has been heavily influenced by his America First and MAGA, Make America Great Again mantra. Both of them advocate for protectionist policies and seeks to reduce trade deficits. In this case, Trump is using the threat of tariffs and decertification to push Canada to resolve the issues surrounding Gulf Stream's certification. Additionally, this move is in the context of broader geopolitical tensions, particularly with China. Canada's growing trade relationship with China, including the signing of a strategic partnership agreement signed in the early weeks of January 2026, has been a major point of contention for President Trump. He has repeatedly warned Canada against making deals with Beijing, even threatening a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if the country continues to strengthen its ties with China. Beyond the trade and economic concerns, there is also a political dimension to the situation. Trump's relationship with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has been increasingly hostile. The most recent rift comes after Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum, where he criticized Trump's approach to global affairs. Trump responded by mocking Carney and making sarcastic comments about Canada's future, even suggesting that it could become the 51st state to avoid tariffs. This personal animosity has only fueled the tensions between the two leaders, and the tariff threat is a way for Trump to assert his dominance in trade negotiations with Canada. The stakes in this conflict are high. If Trump proceeds with the decertification of Canadian-made aircraft and the imposition of tariffs, the disruption to U.S. air travel could be catastrophic. Thousands of planes would be grounded, leading to delays, cancelled flights, and economic losses. Furthermore, the consequences of escalating tensions between the U.S. and Canada would extend beyond the aviation sector. Trade relationships in other industries such as energy, agriculture, and manufacturing would also be affected, as both countries rely heavily on each other for trade. If Canada were to be forced to look for new trade partners outside of the U.S., it could reshape North American trade dynamics entirely. As for now, whether Trump will follow through with his threat is unclear. As Trump has a history of making bold, provocative threats, many of which he later pulls back from, it is possible that this is yet another attempt to gain leverage in a trade dispute. No president has ever directly decertified aircraft, and the responsibility for certifying planes lies with the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, not the White House. This could be a case of Trump making an exaggerated threat to pressure Canada into compliance, or it could be part of a broader strategy to assert dominance over Canada's trade and political decisions. As for now, whether Trump will follow through with his threat, it's unclear. As I just mentioned that President Trump has a history of making bold, provocative threats, it is still possible that this is yet another attempt to gain leverage in a trade dispute. This could be a case of Trump making an exaggerated threat to pressure Canada into compliance, or it could be part of a broader strategy to assert dominance over Canada's trade and political decisions. Ultimately, nevertheless, the U.S.-Canada relationship is at a crossroads. The ongoing trade dispute, exacerbated by Trump's threats, has the potential to severely disrupt both countries' economies. If Trump's tariff and decertification threats are implemented, the impact on the U.S. aviation system and Canada's aircraft industry would be severe. Beyond the economic consequences, the political fallout from this dispute could lead to further strains between the two countries, with broader implications for global trade and security. Whether or not Trump follows through the rhetoric surrounding this issue is a reminder of the fragile nature of international trade relations, especially when personal and political factors are at play. That's all for this episode of Explained. Stay tuned as we bring you more in-depth insights and stories that matter.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Kriti Mehta. We turn our focus today to a diplomatic gambit in the East. The first trip by a British Prime Minister to Beijing in 8 years. Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived in the Chinese capital seeking what he calls a more sophisticated and pragmatic relationship. But behind the handshakes at the Great Hall of the People lies a minefield of past sanctions, rising tariffs, and a massive trade gap. So what is the state of this high-stakes reset? Let's look at the numbers. Total bilateral trade between the UK and China has hit £103 billion in 2025. But the balance is strikingly lopsided. The UK exports roughly £30 billion to China, while importing over £72 billion. This is a £42 billion trade deficit. China is currently the UK's fourth largest trading partner, accounting for 5.5% of total British trade. And as the UK struggles with slow growth, Starmer has brought a delegation of 54 business leaders to ensure London isn't left in the cold. But to move forward, they must address the baggage of the past. The relationship crashed in 2021. The UK imposed sanctions on Chinese officials over allegations of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. Beijing reiterated and retaliated instantly. They blacklisted 9 UK citizens, including sitting members of parliament and peers. Names like Sir Ian Duncan Smith and Tom Tungendat were banned from Chinese soils. Their assets were frozen. British lawmakers and academics were targeted. Now, sources suggest a quid pro quo is on the table. China is considering lifting those sanctions on British MPs. In exchange, London recently gave the green light to China's controversial mega embassy near the Tower of London, a project previously blocked over security concerns. Then there's the battle over the road and the cloud. While the US and European Union have built a tariff wall against Chinese electric vehicles, with tariffs reaching as high as 100% in America, the UK has taken a different path. London has not yet imposed specific penalty tariffs on Chinese EVs. The result? Chinese car brands led by MG and BYD nearly doubled their UK market share in 2025, now accounting for almost 10% of all new car sales. But it isn't all smooth sailing. Under the UK National Security Act, London has clamped down on Chinese investment in critical sectors, from semiconductors to energy. Beijing has warned that targeting its security apparatus will trigger strong countermeasures. Beyond trade, we are seeing a surprising area of cooperation: law enforcement. The two nations are set to sign an agreement to disrupt the supply chains of human smugglers. Chinese factories are the primary source for the small boat engines used by gangs in the English Channel. This deal would see intelligence sharing to stop those engines from ever reaching the French coast. The UK is walking a tightrope. On one side, Washington, where President Donald Trump has imposed a 10% baseline tariff on all imports, including British goods. London is desperate to carve out an exemption. On the other side, Beijing, the only market big enough to offset a transatlantic trade war. So is this a new golden era? Hardly. China's team, Starmer's team, is calling it de-risking, not decoupling. They want Chinese investment in green gigafactories, but are banning Chinese tech from the 5G network. They want Chinese consumers for British services, but are condemning the crackdown in Hong Kong. As the Prime Minister concludes his talks today, the world is watching to see if pragmatism can survive geopolitics. In a turbulent 2026, the UK is betting that it can be the bridge between two colliding superpowers. But as history shows, bridges are often the first thing to collapse under pressure. Joining me now for this discussion is Dr. Asta Chadha, who is Associate Professor of International Relations at Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto. Dr. Chadha, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's then start with the first question. The UK government has recently approved China's massive new embassy at Royal Mint Court, just days before Starmer's arrival in Beijing. To what extent would you say that this approval serves as a diplomatic down payment to secure the lifting of sanctions on British MPs? And are there any real long-time security risks of allowing such a large-scale facility so close to the City of London's financial infrastructure?
Right. Well, thank you for having me here on your channel for the discussion. I mean, we need to remember that this facility at Royal Mint Court, the one that you're referring to as the new Chinese embassy area, this was bought by China back in 2018, and it had since then been under, severe scrutiny by the British, British organizations, British government, British intelligence, because of its proximity to Britain's financial center and also proximity to the other important key sectors. I'm hearing this proximity to the fiber optic cables that run throughout under the city, and then they do connect somehow to the intelligence agencies in London as well. So there were a lot of let's say aspects to this particular property. The second I think anxiety that the British had was with regard to the sheer size of this facility that has now been approved. It's 10 times larger than the earlier, embassy that China has had in London. So why does China need such a large embassy? Are they planning to increase the number of personnel? Is this going to be in any way used or in some way utilized as a dual use space, wherein on one hand there is an increased surveillance on not just pro-democracy Hong Kongers who are currently in UK, or is it also intended to otherwise listen in on conversations that UK does not want China to listen in on? Now, all of these concerns seems to have been pushed to one side with the approval of this facility by the British Prime Minister, and the fact that he's trying to visit China after allowing the construction of this facility says clearly that definitely he's trying to prove to China that he's willing to overlook the past past issues that UK might have had with regard to human rights questions or abuses or any other issues that UK might have wanted to raise with China in the past. Now, with regard to your question as to whether this could in fact have a lot of a lot of impact on lifting of the Beijing sanctions on UK MPs, I mean, that remains to be seen. What we're hearing now is there is a possibility, but let's not forget there are other things in the run here. UK here is more dependent on China, definitely, when it comes to its own supply chains. UK wants to achieve this newfound friendship with China that they're trying to secure, much like Canada, by the way. And given the fact that the US's partners are one by one lining up to warm up their relations with Beijing, shows to us that this is no longer just about lifting sanctions on certain members of parliament. This goes beyond. This is about catering to China in a way that China gets more access to their local markets. We do know that there is a huge amount of tariff, not just on US allies, but also on Beijing by United States. So this is one way that US allies and US rivals are trying to bridge that gap and bridge that relationship, trying to secure their own economic security in one way or another. And then thirdly, I must also mention that while China's facility had been had not been allowed to be developed in London since 2018. Similarly, there was a ban, or there was some kind of a stay on even London's expansion plans or UK's expansion plans of its own embassy in Beijing. So the hope with Prime Minister Starmer's visit is that China would also likewise reciprocate in the same way and allow UK to then start constructing or reconstructing or refurbishing its own embassy in Beijing, just the way that they wanted to.
Right. Dr. Chadha, now, in fact, let's also talk about the fact that while the US has moved towards 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, the UK has largely held back and also allowed brands like BYD to gain significant market share.
Our joint neighbor, we are also closely following the process of establishing the new government following the elections for the parliament. With my distinguished counterpart, we also talked about the security and stability of Iraq, and we underlined the importance of this for our countries and for the region. And we have a will and determination to work closely with the new Iraqi government. Distinguished members of the press, Turkey and Iran are two important actors of the current geography that we are existing in. And in this framework, the continuation of the contacts is not just important for our bilateral relations, but for also the regional security and welfare. I would like to thank my distinguished friend, Foreign Minister Arakci, for this visit and for his contributions. And following this visit, our president is also going to receive Foreign Minister Arakci. And once again, I would like to say welcome to our country and to Istanbul. The floor is yours, Mr. Minister. In the name of God, the merciful and the beneficiary, I would like to greet all of the members of the press, and first and foremost, I would like to thank distinguished brother Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan for inviting me and for his hospitality and the warm interest that he has extended to me and to the accompanying delegation. We had very productive negotiations. We talked about various different topics, about various challenges, had exchanges of opinion, both in relation to bilateral relations, regional